Have you kept in touch with anyone?
Oh my god.
Alphabetized by last name. Read on.
I'm assuming that.
Well, I know I kind of wondered about that. Not too bad.
Thank you for coming out today. We are very pleased to have Barb Richards joining us today as our MC and panel moderator. Barb's accomplishments are far too numerous to list. However, you can see a sample of them up on our screen. I was just checking to make sure they're actually up there. Thank you, Shannon. But I would like to congratulate her on her most recent recognition. Barb was just recognized as a recipient of a Queen's Jubilee Diamond Medal. This is a great honor and a well-deserved one for all the work she has done to better our communities for all. Without further ado, I will hand over the rest of the introductions to Barb Richards.
Well, thank you, Susan, and welcome and good morning. We'd like to thank you for joining us today, the Simcoe Muskoka Workforce Development Board. And I know that they are very delighted to have such a large turnout. And we would especially like to thank our employers for taking the time to inform themselves of the changes in the employment sector. We'd also like to thank all the employment organizations here today. Your work is constantly evolving and your efforts are recognized and appreciated. A special thank you to our panel who have made the time to join us here today to provide you with an update on their sector. A thank you as well to our keynote speaker, Max Valcat, who is here today to both entertain and inform us. And lastly, a thank you to the Simcoe Muskoka Workforce Development Board members and our partners at the Ministry of Training and Colleges and Universities who have made this event and many others possible. And now, to begin our event, we welcome Councillor Ron Douglas, who will welcome our group to First Nations territory. Ron?
Good morning. If some of you haven't been to our community before, it's our custom in First Nations territory to have our chief welcome all of the delegates who are visiting our community. And she's unable to be here today, so I'm here in her place. So welcome to our community. I hope your day goes very well here and that you go home safely to your families this evening and that your work is productive. So with that, have a good day. Miigwech.
Thank you. Well, we have our first speaker, and he is Mark Manitak. Mark is the Employment and Training Coordinator for the Omigawatch Tribal Training and Employment Resources, known as OTTR. And OTTR's vision is to support a proud, strong, and vibrant community that is sustainable, unified, and guided by Omigawatch traditions and values. Welcome, Mark. Would you like to use this mic, or do you want to? You're a little taller than Susan. I see we hide behind the laptop.
We'll see if
You want to use that one? All right.
This should be good. If everybody can hear me.
Okay, I'd like to thank Susan for inviting me here today, and Barb for being the MC, and of course Ron for representing the Paramount First Nation. Ron is on council, so we have within the First Nation an administration, a government body. You have chief and council, so Ron is on council. It's kind of like your mayor and councillor within a town. Panelists, who have gotten in already, thank you for coming and supporting us, and of course for the delegates. I'm also here with two of the staff. There's only three of us here from the Tribal Council today. We have Jennifer Shaw and Linda Grant, who support the employment training efforts of the Oglala Tribal Council. Just a little bit about myself. I'm an Algonquin from northern Quebec. I grew up in Toronto. My father really grew up from like 3.5 hours. It takes about 3.5 hours now to get to his community, a remote community, north of Ottawa. Growing up, he was very remote, and he eventually made it to Toronto and became an electrical engineer. You know, we're looking back into the late 40s, early 50s. It was quite the accomplishment, I guess, for him to actually have done that way back then. There's a lot of travel involved, and there's a lot of issues for him actually to get educated because there was no school system where he lived. So I ended up in Toronto. I grew up there. Now I work with the First Nations of the Oglala Tribal Council. They're Chippewas. They are Potawatomis, and although our thing is a little fuzzy here, you're dealing with Chippewas, Potawatomis, and Mississaugas. So if you look at the map of Ontario there, you can see that we're quite stretched. From north of Cobourg, about 20 minutes, to Oglala First Nation, all the way up to Mooster Point, which is just south of MacTier. We provide a variety of services, including education, engineering supports, financial advice, building inspections, and the areas that we work in is economic development and employment training. Historically, I pulled from our website, this is that there was relationships since the late 1600s, but when I think about it, back in the 1600s, who else was there? So I think the relationships certainly go back further than that. And around 1990, the Tribal Council itself incorporated. Our board of directors is really representative of the 6 First Nation chiefs. So there's 3 of us that work within the Tribal Council. We have an agreement that is it's a federal labor market development agreement, and what it does is allows us to do programming to get people into the labor force. There's 16 such agreements in Ontario, and there's First Nation, there's Métis, and there's off reserve. What we're allowed to fund is employment counseling services, which we find the key, the start to the whole process to get people involved in the labor market, and then we develop our own programming. We have names for our programs, but for the most part, what you're looking at is targeted subsidies, training purchases, we get into apprenticeships, we get into literacy and essential skills, and we get into partnerships. We have the ability to design, develop, and implement our own programs, and we have the ability to do our own approvals, which really cuts down the time frames for our clients that come forward, because sometimes when you get a client, that client kind of knows what they want to do. You have them within the office, you want to move forward. So there's no 6-8 week approval process. We try to get things done within a couple of weeks if we get the client and get them through the process. These agreements have been around since about 1996. They started off with the agreements started in around the 1990s. This whole coalition process allowing Aboriginal people the right to design, develop, and implement their own labor market agreements. They've evolved quite a bit since that time. We do now have a fairly comprehensive process to apply. It's a bit of an application process. It's usually on a 5-year basis. The federal government comes up with a strategy. We have to do a strategic business plan. We have to do an annual operational plan. We have to make an expenditure plan. And then we have to set targets and assign financial responsibility to each of our programs and how we can actually meet our targets. That's reviewed with us annually. So though we have our own ability to design, develop, and implement, there certainly is a lot of reporting involved. Just a little bit, some of the programs. Targeted subsidy, it's like, our programs are much like Employment Ontario. We do about the same type of things that we do in our own way. A couple examples, we do have a Black Oak Savannah in Oliver, which is just north of Cobourg. Through that whole terrain of Ontario, there is a whole, environmental impact going on where they're trying to have more construction going on through the Black Oak Savannah. And out there they have not only Black Oak Savannah, but they have prairie grass. So there is a standalone organization that is out there. They have I think it's like 3 kilometers worth of trails. They have an infrastructure, they have a building, they have an interpretive center. But what they didn't have was someone from the community working within there. They do have a board of directors that is well represented from the community, but there's no one actually working there. So we found a youth in the community who had the interest. She hadn't had her grade 12, so we had her upgraded throughout this process. So she's able to have a job, get her grade 12, and now she's going on to go to college in natural resources management. So these are the type of things that we're able to do. Mix and match our programs so that they're more effective for the individual. I'd say about 70% of our funding goes directly towards the infrastructure development of First Nations. There has been a huge growth within each of the communities. If we look at things like water plants, we supported them getting their water technicians in place. In this case here, there was a building put up for the daycare. It's a beautiful daycare facility. It's in Moose Deer Point, which is near Mactier. It is in partnership with Neon Technologies. And what they have up there is actually an injection molding facility, a plastic injection molding facility. And their partner is Custom, and that's out of Bolton. A gentleman by the name of Robert Shad had a cottage up there and said, hey, let me try to help you guys, let me partner. Now they really have a really high-end injection molding facility. And to support the facility and the people that work there, he built a daycare. And what we were able to do was put something in place. We didn't have her ECE, or was on the way towards it. She was able to complete her courses, and now she's actually the trained community member that runs the place. The injection molding facility it's quite amazing. They have like a 3% waste that really comes out of there. So 90% of whatever goes into there is consumed and or recycled. Robert Shad, I don't know if any of you know him, he was responsible for having the bear hunt shut down in Ontario. He also, he was quite the high power guy. He had David Suzuki sit on the board for a while. He had Premier sit on the board for a while. So he's really helped out the community in getting jobs. There's about 20 jobs, I guess, out there in a small community. Living allowance, the First Nations themselves do have education. They can apply throughout the First Nation to go to post-secondary, but the demand is always higher than what's actually out there available for funding. So what we try to do is assist the process in either helping students or before they become students understand what the process is, get them through the employment counseling process, get them to understand that, if you're going to go to school, try to do it the first time around so that you're not wasting money, and do something that you're actually going to like. In this case here, we had a gentleman go through Georgian College and really help them understand if you want to be a carpenter, so the courses do you need. There's this pre-carpenter course, so we got him through that. He did well, he liked it. He took some time afterwards, just worked some menial jobs, and he said, I want to go back to it. So we were able to help him. Now he's actually in the Georgian Apprenticeship Program. Some of the challenges we face, they're wide-ranging in terms of the clients that we work with. And you can see geographically, we go from Cobourg to Parry Sound, so that in itself stretches our budget. We have a youth population that we're really trying to engage now. And what do you do with youth? You try to bring them in and get them to understand, what type of things do they want to do, get them to understand their career, or do they actually just want a job? We We have literacy and essential skills issues. So we're looking to partner right now with people that provide literacy and essential skills. We can certainly provide some funding towards it, but we're always looking for free services. Apprenticeship, we're trying to tie in. We have a lot of clients right now that are just 25, 35 years old. They may be shy in their grade 12, so they can maybe get their apprenticeship or get an apprenticeship, so we're trying to help them out. We're just starting to make progress now working with unions and finding employers that actually are hiring and want to take on apprenticeships. We're trying to engage mainstream business as a whole. Again, we're looking to really look in Midland, looking in Barrie. We do have probably about 50% of our total client base does live off reserve, so they're within the urban communities, and we're trying to find employers to help them and get them into the labor force. We have rising training costs. I remember when I started this, it was like $2,200 or something that to get your easy truck driver. Now you're looking at about $5,000. So costs are simply doubling and tripling. And it goes the same for the wages too. We do provide the target wage subsidy, which will go up to 60% of the wage, up to a maximum of $9 an hour. And we're finding now that when we get into these agreements, it go up to say up to 50 weeks. And you're looking at about $17,000 to get someone trained in that process. So it certainly is taxing on our budget, and which means that we have less dollars and we can train less people. So any type of partnerships that we can get to lengthen how far we can go with their budget certainly helps. Things that we're trying to do is looking at making contact with employers, and I think this is a great opportunity for us here today. So certainly if there's any interest from any employers out there that would like to talk to myself, or to Linda, or to Jennifer, we encourage that. We'll be around for most of the day. We also have, one of the big issues that we have is, if you look at, we talk to employers, and some of our people go out there, and some of the things they get back, they say, well, you have huge gaps in your resume. It seems like you can't work for a bit, but you don't work for a bit, you work for a bit, you don't work for a bit. We have two communities in our area, Georgian Isle and Christian Isle, which is Bosley First Nation. Both, are remote. They're remote in southern Ontario. If you climb the tallest tree in Georgian Bay, in Georgian Island, you can see the CN Tower, but in order to get there, you have to take a 25 to 30-minute ferry. During the winter, it's actually better for them because the ice freezes over and they're able to cross over the ice bridge, and they have a lot more freedom. But for the most part, they're stuck by a ferry schedule, as is over in Christian Isle. Christian Isle ferry is probably about 40-45 minutes, and it's 3 miles. But that huge gap right there, it's a world of difference. That has created a remote situation, and it's good in some cases because you'll really see that their culture, their language is a lot more prevalent in those communities. However, unemployment rates are higher. So what happens is that we look at part-time jobs, they'll have seasonal jobs, and then they won't work for some period of time. So moving that from that seasonal mentality to getting full-time employment, there are some challenges and struggles that we go through to get them there. What are we looking for? We're looking for partnerships. We're looking for apprenticeship opportunities. We're looking for work experience opportunities for our members. We are looking for training opportunities, looking for full-time employment, relevant up-to-date labor market information, which Susan will provide us some yesterday, and I look forward to working with you in the future on that. We don't have a lot of labor market information within the communities themselves. Basically, I say, what's Joe doing? And somebody will be able to tell me. So it's more of on a personal level. Communities are not that large. I think within RAM itself, I think the population on reserve is about 1,200 or so. Christian Isle maybe about 800. I have a community that has 45 members that live on reserve. So labor market information for 45 members. What's Joe doing? We have summer programming. We like to get our youth to work. A lot of them are secondary students, but we also have post-secondary students, and we do have funding available for that as well. It's an application process, and again, I encourage employers to come and talk to us. What we can provide, we certainly provide a good link into the First Nation labor pool. There is other agreement holders out there within our area. There's the Friendship Centers in Orillia, the Friendship Centers in Barrie and in Midland, and there's the Métis Nation of Ontario that's out of Midland as well. We have funding for specific partnerships that lead to employment. So again, we have the targeted wage subsidy, and then there's always the federal and provincial government come up with these call for proposals, and we find that we make a good partner for that as well. So what we'd like to do is do some form of joint venture, whether it be with an employer, with an educational institute, to get our people funded for training and employment opportunities. And of course, we can provide assistance with job retention. So once we get a person in there with a contract, we can assist you with ensuring that the person is not come back the next day. And that is our presentation. If there are any questions, certainly you can get us at training@loganmunch.ca, and there's our phone number there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I think that people love to hear success stories, and it was great to hear your success stories. I think that, when we see what other people are doing, there's really no new ideas. Most we borrow from someone else. So it's nice to hear those stories and give people ideas. And it's nice to hear that you can mix and match and do other things that perhaps some of us are a little envious of the fact that you can speed up the process, because it's the length of time that people have to wait to get approval for things that sometimes drive us crazy. But it's all about partnerships, and it's really neat to hear that. I hope that everyone today will form a partnership with someone. Talk to people you don't know. Don't just sit with the people you came with. Talk to other people and try to form some partnerships. And our next person, our next panel guest, is Debbie Soucy. And in addition to her work with Simcoe County Services, she's a very busy person. She sits on an advisory committee and boards of local, provincial, and national organizations to effectively advocate for employment for people with disabilities. And Debbie will now share with us some insights and some ideas that she's gathered through her career. Welcome, Debbie. Would you rather have this mic? You're not so tall either. You can want to stay there.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Barb, for that kind introduction. I'm very happy to be here this morning. Can everyone hear me? Thank you. I would like to add to the introduction a little piece about my everyday work, which is with Simcoe Community Services in Barrie and Orillia areas. And I supervise a program that provides employment supports to teens and adults with intellectual disabilities. I also sit on a provincial network, the Ontario Disability Employment Network, and our vision there is that all people who have a disability in Ontario have access to the labor force and the ability to achieve meaningful employment. I'm going to start a little bit of history. Going back about 30 years ago, when we think about people with disabilities, we were all focused on trying to fix them. We assumed that people with disabilities were different, they were a minority, and we needed to do things to make them meet our norms and values. We did what we could to make them as normal as possible, and then we went to employers and cajoled them into hiring that nice person that has a handicap. We've since become a lot wiser. It's not really people with disabilities that needs fixing, it's our own beliefs and our own attitudes. We recognize that disability is not unusual. It's frequent and commonplace part of the human experience. We've learned that far from being a small minority, people with disabilities represent at least 10% of the human population throughout the world. When we get a little bit closer to home, Ontario, about 16.5% of Ontarians have a disability. We've learned through the years that people with disabilities, like everyone else, have their own individual talents, strengths, and gifts to contribute to our societies and to our workplaces. We've learned it is not our job to fix people with disabilities. It is to help society in general and employers to realize the contribution people can make to their workforce, to help them engage fully with the enthusiasm, talents, and productivity of everyone. The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act of 2005 provides a very extensive definition of disability. I'm going to just highlight a few, maybe the more common ones that you may run into in your day-to-day work and personal life. Definition of disability includes a person who may have a physical or mobility challenge. They may have vision challenges, hearing challenges, an intellectual or developmental disability, a brain injury, learning disability, or mental illness, just to name a very few. Some people are born with disabilities, and some acquire them during their lifetime through illness or injury. Many disabilities are invisible. It often involves a person learning things in a different way, or just doing tasks just differently, not unlike you or I. Many of us have developed a set of beliefs about what disability is, what people with disabilities are capable of,